Oh, yeah.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Spear from the Past. It's going to be a fun one today. We're talking about WCW Souled Out from 98. And with me, I've got Austin here. Austin, how's it going?
It's going good, Malcolm. It seems like when you spin late era WCW, it's almost like the Pez signal, like the bat signal goes up into the air, and it's like, got to call them for the late era WCW, but I'm happy to do it.
It's either you, John Mark, or Matt Majo, who I know are really into the WCW ones.
Sure.
It just was a big of covered WCW more than I've covered actual WWE pay-per-view. So, this is a fun one. I don't have much sort of preamble on this, so we're going to just get straight into it. At the start of the match, at the start of the episode, we had the commentators come out and do their thing. Dusty Rhodes looked like he was in a whole bunch of outfits, as will be revealed later on.
Yeah, he's wearing like 3 layers, and there's a reason for that.
I'm definitely going to butcher half these names for this first match, but the first match we had an 8-man tag match with Juventud Guerrero, Super Callo, Liz Mark Jr., Chavo Guerrero versus La Parca, Psychosis, Silver King, and El Dandy. And this was a fun sort of like display of like a whole bunch of lucha libre wrestlers, and it was just one of those fun matches. It was a really good way to open up, and then. Yeah, and at the end, La Parca sort of turned heel on everyone and attacked everyone with the chair and all that. But also, what did you think about this opening match?
Yeah, no, I mean, this was kind of reminiscent of sort of early era, 95, 96 WCW. You open up the pay-per-view with the cruiserweight match. And yeah, this one, it's like, all these guys came out, and I know most of them, but at the same time, in the middle of the match, when they're doing lucha rules and they're popping in and out of the thing, with no tags, it's hard to kind of keep up with everybody. I spotted Liz Mark, because Liz Mark would go around, and his main office was just chopping the hell out of everybody every time he got in there, just chop, 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 chop. Hoovy looked pretty good. I think he was still wearing the mask at this time. But yeah, they get to the inevitable spot where all of them do a dive to the outside on everybody. So, one dives, and then another one dives, and another one dives, and another one dives. And Air Hoovy is kind of the final one where he does sort of the step up, over the ropes and does his big dive. So that was fun. He had a 450, which looked pretty good. And yeah, like you said, Chavo, I think, finally got the win with like a tornado DDT. And yeah, oh my God, did La Parca just waffle everybody with his chair right afterwards? Dude, right in the head for a lot of these guys. And again, it's hard to go back and watch all these when we know what we know about concussions nowadays, but boy, did he. A couple of the guys got their hands up, and did the thing, but I think Hoovy took one like right in the head, just like ducked and took one. And yeah, he just leveled people with his chair afterwards. But yeah, other than that, it was a fun opener. And yeah, crowd was super into it, even though they probably didn't care who was who. It's just action for 8-9 minutes, everybody just flying around. But they like that stuff in WCW, so it's fine.
But next up we had Chris Benoit versus Raven, and I think it was called a Raven Rules match, but
most of Raven's matches were Raven's Rules, which all that meant was it was basically no DQ. That's all it meant.
Raven came out before his entourage, and the ring announcer said that Raven must wheel tonight. I don't know if there was a storyline there. It was and that his flock was being banned from ringside. The match itself was really fun. Like I've said this before, is like despite what Chris Benoit did later on in his life, but it's like he was a good he was a good wrestler, and this match I thought was pretty decent. Then afterwards, you had Dean Malenko come out to attack Raven. But Austin, what are your thoughts about this match?
No, yeah, I mean, I'm the same way as you. Setting aside obviously what he did later, Chris Benoit, especially around this time and even still now, is still one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I just like watching the guy work. He can get a good match out of anybody. He just went out there, and I think the crowds in WCW liked him because he was just no nonsense. He just beat people up, really good. And that was basically what this was. Although Raven took a good chunk of the first few minutes of the match because he kind of jumped Benoit and used some of the rules to his advantage. They brawled around a little bit. But basically once Benoit kind of got the advantage. He like ripped his shirt off at one point so he could just chop him a little bit better. He's suplexing him on the ramp. He's just suplexing him all over the place. And then eventually did something that was really, really stupid, Malcolm. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Even just in storyline or in real life, is he put a chair on Raven's face and then went up and did his diving headbutt right onto the chair. And again, the concussion thing and what we know about Benoit, I winced when I saw that because they were both down for a minute. He got a cover and it was a kick out, but no, it was kind of cool. The crowd popped big when he pulled him into the crossface, and then Raven just passed out. He didn't actually tap out. He just kind of passed out. And like you said, the flock hits the ring. There's Sick Boy and Hammer and Kidman and everybody jumping in on the place, but Dean Malenko was actually able to make the save, and I think the crowd appreciated that. The flock didn't get the final laugh on that one. But fun brawl, fun sort of no DQ match. A little more split than I thought it was, but these two always had pretty good chemistry. They had other matches on Nitro as well. They were usually pretty good.
Yeah. But then next up, we heard Chris Jericho defeating Rey Mysterio for the WCW Cruiserweight. And this is real. I didn't actually realize that Chris Jericho had the same theme he had for most of his WWE run.
No, that was a dubbed in over the network, Malcolm. No, this is dubbed. His actual music is just some generic rock music he had back in WCW. No, they dub in his break the walls down music when he comes out in WCW. It's really weird.
Okay, that's what completely threw me off.
Yes,
because I'm surprised they didn't do it for Rey Mysterio, honestly.
They do the same thing. If you watch any of RVD's matches in ECW, like on ECW pay-per-views, he used to come out to Pantera's Walk, but they'll edit in his WWE music instead.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what they do.
But anyway, the match was fun. Like, I've always enjoyed sort of watching Chris Jericho matches. Like, he's one of those ones that, like, in his later on career, especially when he was a heel, I do think he was a really good worker. And then just this promo he does at the end while he's attacking Ray is like, I think it was just showed like how like dickish he was back in WCW. But Austin, what do you think about Jericho?
Yeah, this is not their best match. I think they had better matches here and there on different nitros and pay-per-views. But they usually have pretty good chemistry. It was fairly short for what it was. But this is the Jericho I like around 98 when he's doing like, to steal a thing he would do later, the list of moves that he can do. And, he's just being a real asshole, and he's got his hair pulled back and that goofy like ponytail and thing. But he's beating up on Ray here. Of course, like every other match, he goes after the knee of Ray, so he can't jump all over the place. Ray fights back and does kind of his West Coast pop and, all of his things. But he went for a top rope Rana, and it was a cool spot because he went for the top rope Rana for the finish, Malcolm, if you remember. And then, but Jericho just caught him and then just pulled him right into the Lion Tamer, into the walls of Jericho. And the crowd actually popped for that and thought it was pretty cool. And Ray taps pretty quickly. A much better looking Boston Crab than what Rick Martel would try to do in the following match. It was good. There was nothing wrong with it. I enjoyed it for what it was. But they were going on to have better matches here and there other than this one. But it was still good.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I did notice throughout this is that whole spray paint transition with the giant hand sort of popping up on the screen. It was a little bit distracting, but I'm pretty sure I think they did because it was like this was an NWO pay-per-view anyway. But
the 97 one was a straight NWA pay-per-view. It's an infamous pay-per-view for being pretty bad overall. And then they kind of learned their lesson, so they redid the name of this one, but it was more of a joint, pay-per-view thing. Because it was really stupid what they did with the end. It's a fascinating show, but it's a really bad show. The one in 97.
But then we had the segment where Mean Gene was in the ring talking to JJ Dillon about the WCW landscape and why he made the WCW championship vacant. Then he calls down sort of Roddy Piper sort of comes out and then tells Scott Hall, Sting, and Hogan to come down to the ring, and then to kind of announce Hogan versus Sting at the Super Bowl 98, and then at the end of the match was I believe Scott Hall won some championship thing to be the next challenger. And Scott all kind of walks away, looks like he's upset about this whole situation. But what do you thought about the segment?
It was just a Nitro segment. It was a weird Nitro segment in the middle of a pay-per-view, which I thought was strange. You know, that we're just going to do this thing with JJ, and Roddy Piper's just droning on and on and on. And like, you know, it literally, this is every other segment they would do on Nitro around this time, where Hogan would come out and mean mug for the camera, and, you know, Bischoff would come out, and it would just be a bunch of nonsense. Like, it was really silly to just, yeah, we're announcing the next main event at Super Bowl. Why? Because Sting, you know, they vacated his title, which was weird. And so if you notice, Malcolm, there's no world title match on this show, which is like really weird.
No.
Yeah, the fact there's no world title match is really, really strange. And so I guess they had to somehow do something with the world title. So like, oh, we'll just announce the next main event. But you could have done that on Nitro. It's just odd.
Yeah. Then we had Booker T versus Rick Martel for the WCW Television Championship. This match itself, I really enjoyed it. Like Booker T's great. I don't really know much about like Rick Martel and that, but I mean, like he seemed good. Whether or not it was Booker get it drawing out his best or something, I don't know. But then after the match, you had Rick Martel shaking hands with Booker. Then Perry Saturn attacking Rick Martel with Booker coming to the rescue. But Austin, what are your thoughts about this match?
So just a little background for you, Malcolm, about Rick Martel. Yeah, I mean, he was the model in WWF for a little while, kind of in the mid-90s, and then he comes here to WCW, and unfortunately, his stint here is very, very short. I mean, literally, we caught him on this pay-per-view. This is his only pay-per-view match he ever had, WCW. He was only on a couple of Nitros. He was literally there from January to February because he got hurt. He, like, tore something, like an ACL or something in his leg. He comes back in, like, either June or July, I can't remember, and gets hurt again. So he literally retires right after that. I mean, literally came back, had one match, and got hurt again. So it's kind of unfortunate because he's a really good worker. And yeah, he had really good chemistry with Booker T here. Yeah, it's a very basic match as far as like basic sort of heel. I mean, like I don't think Rick Marcel's necessarily a heel, but like he was kind of, doing the frustration thing and kind of using a little bit of dirty tactics. But the only things I wrote down was Booker T nailed him with the axe kick near the end of this match. Oh my God, he came down right on his neck. And just absolutely nailed him. And then he does the Harlem Hangover, which you remember was kind of his flip, leg drop. But man, they showed the replay of this, and his ankle landed right on Martel's face and his nose, and just killed him with this Harlem Hangover. But the crowd, again, they love Booker T. They popped for him, and yeah, he had a good little run with the TV title around this time. But yeah, it was a solid match. I liked it.
But then next up we had Larry Zbyszko versus Scott Hall, who was paired with Louis Spicolli. But and then before the match even started, like Larry sort of stood at the entranceway. Then Dusty leaves the commentator booth and comes out, joins him. Like turns out it was going to join Larry as the manager. But the match itself, like I was really into this match until it ended by DQ. When Dusty attacks Larry, then reveals that he has the NWO shirt under the jacket. I mean, I don't think he goes back to the commentary booth after this, but like they keep talking about it throughout the show.
Yeah. I believe this was his last time in the commentary booth. Yeah, once he does the NWO turn. I was surprised he was on this show because I mostly remember him doing commentary in like 95, 96. So I thought something was weird. Well, although it made sense at the beginning of the show because Larry at the time was usually on commentary as the third guy. So it made sense because he had a match. So like that made sense that he wasn't on commentary. So that's fine. So they brought in Dusty. That's all good. And yeah, I mean, the match was extremely old school. Like it was literally like, Scott put some heat on him. Larry fought back with like punches and lefts and rights and very basic moves, and he tries to go for the sleeper and does this little thing. The crowd actually was chanting like Larry sucks for most of the match from what I could hear. I think they were more actually into Scott Hall. But yeah, like you said, Dusty runs in. They try to play it to where he like it doesn't make any sense, Malcolm, because he first goes after Louis Spicolli with the elbows, but then where the angle goes and he reveals the NWO shirt, well, that's your buddy in the end. What? So why? And then the crowd is like, kind of into the turn, but you can tell it's like really weird. And Tony's super shocked. We'll talk about the rest of the show. He's just like, he's so shocked. He's so shocked and shaking. He can't get over it. This is one of the dumber turns they ever did, because it's Dusty Rhodes and it's supposed to be like this new world order, like these, like, you know, guys taking over, and like he's so old school that it just is weird. And they never really did anything with this because he just didn't show up on TV much after this. So I think it was kind of a pointless thing. This match was everything was just leading up to this, but it's a really stupid turn. I never liked this Dusty Rhodes turn. I thought it was silly, but the match was okay for what it was.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones like commentators focusing on the Dusty turn kind of like hampered my enjoyment of the next match a little bit.
Right.
Because of it was Ray Trailer, which is one of the another alter ego for Big Boss, which I think I've covered that 3 different alter egos.
Right.
And the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott, with Ted DiBiase as the manager, versus NWO, which was Buff Bagwell, Conan, and Scott Norton, with the manager Vincent. Which, but the match itself was a decent 6-man tag match. Like, Scott Steiner was on the apron for most of the match, which I think, I did a little bit of research on this. I think there was this kind of storyline with Scott being like, with Rick not wanting Scott in the match and something like that.
It was something to where Scott would like run wild and just start beating up everybody. He was like this madman around this time because he's right in between like old Scott Steiner and like Big Papa Pump. So he's got like the body of Big Papa Pump, but he's still got like the hair and the goatee, you know, of like his old school. So this is that weird in between spot. But yeah, there was a storyline where like, you know, that Rick was trying to hold him back and not let him loose because he would go on rampages. But no, you're right. It was weird because I love Scott Steiner, and to see him like not be part of this match until like the last minute, you know, was really unfortunate. Yeah.
But after the match, you had Scott Steiner doing a pose off of Buff Bagwell, which with his teammates being noticeably annoyed by it. I don't know if it turns to Scott sort of turning away from them eventually, but
yeah, no, I didn't mind. Like, this match was okay, just went a little too long. Yeah, and again, the crowd was just kind of you know, wasn't much heat for this. Although I love the team of Scott Norton and Buff Bagwell. If you remember, Malcolm, they had a team called Vicious and Delicious, which was great.
Yeah.
I really love Buff Bagwell around this time because early 98 Buff Bagwell, literally his whole thing is he's gonna hit a move and pose, and hit a move and pose, and he's very proud of himself when he does this, and he's really fun to watch. I love Scott Norton. He's a big bull and a big hoss, and you know, I like the bits where he was mixing it up with Rick or Ray Trailer because they just had this big kind of, you know, hoss fight, and I didn't mind that kind of stuff. But yeah, I wish I would have seen more Scott Steiner because once he got in, he was suplexing dudes all over the place, and he, you know, suplexes Scott Norton, which was really impressive, you know, like a really big belly to belly, and then he wins with the Steiner screwdriver, which was always interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, it was fun for what it was. But yeah, the whole time Tony's like distraught on commentary, and Bobby Heenan's trying to make like dumb jokes to cheer him up, and he keep going, "Shut up, Brain." He's just like, "Shut up, shut up." And he's like, "I'm just trying to cheer you up, bro." And they brought Mike Tenay, by the way, out there to be kind of the third guy at this point. But it was like a story for the rest of the commentary night, you know, and it kind of took away from some of the matches, I think.
Yeah. But after this, there's a match which, after I sort of read the background of it, I kind of felt a little bit weird by it. But it was Kevin Nash with Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff in his corner, versus the Giant, which we all know as Big Show these days. Well, actually, I think he's more known as by his real name of Paul White in AEW. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of obvious that WCW was trying to use Big Show to be the Andre the Giant just by name. But the match itself, I think it was one of those standard sort of big wrestlers fighting, which was just very slow and that. Then you had like Kevin botching his powerbomb and injuring the Giant's neck, which then WCW decided to turn it into a storyline. Which
the powerbomb storyline where he got fined $15,000 or whatever every time if he did a powerbomb going forward. Which, by the way, they only like half enforced most of the time. You know, sometimes he would do it and they wouldn't address it. Sometimes he would do it and they would address it. It was completely hit or miss as to whether or not they ever addressed it, but he would still do it anyways.
But Austin, what did you think about this match?
It's a Kevin Nash match, dude. Like, you're not going to get a great Kevin Nash match at this time around WCW. He just had like kind of really slow plotting matches. He does all of his sidewalk slams and he does his stuff in the corner, his knees in the corner, his elbows. Now, he did try a dive over the ropes at one point, which was like, that threw me off because he tries to like do this like slingshot over the ropes and then Giant catches him and like runs him into the railing. But yeah, I mean, more of this was about Hogan just goofing on the crowd, like off to the side, at ringside. I'll give two spots, like the choke slam Eric Bischoff took from the ring apron. He got brought in like over the ropes, and it was a really good bump. Like, it was a really good choke slam. So I'll give him credit for that. And oh my God, yeah. Nash and the Giant had done this powerbomb spot successfully about a year before, Malcolm, where he had actually powerbombed him and it was fine. And he did, and it was really impressive. You can look it up. But yeah, this one, Big Show's heavier this time. Nash's knees are in bad shape around this time. And oh my God, he picks him up and he just loses him. And dude, Giant lands right on his head, like right on his head.
Yeah.
And apparently he was okay eventually, but he got a stinger here. And yeah, it's really gross. It's really disgusting. And yeah, he damn near killed Giant here. But yeah, the match itself is not great.
Yeah. But then next up we had what I would actually consider the match that probably should have been the main event.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, we've got Bret Hart versus Ric Flair, which I believe was this Bret Hart's first match in WCW.
This was his very first match because he had come in at the previous pay-per-view, which was Starrcade 97, which is pretty infamous, Malcolm. I'm sure, as you know, that was the Hogan Sting match that they botched the finish. Hogan just beat him up and pinned him. And then, they tried to pretend it was a fast count, even though it wasn't. And then Hart, was like the enforcer, and he restarted the match. And then, Sting won and he gave him the belt. And then they took this title away from Sting, making him look like a total geek. But like, yeah, this was his first official match. Yeah, he had been going back and forth with Flair on the mic about being the best there is in the business, that sort of thing. So they challenged him to match, and but not by her first match, because this was really good and it should have been the main event. Absolutely.
No, I don't really have anything to add. Like this was meant, like Bret Hart has always been a good wrestler, and even Ric Flair, like I've like when he's on form, I've always really enjoyed his wrestling. And it was just one of those matches which was just really so exciting, like from start to finish. And especially if you weren't going to have a WCW Championship match, this should have been the main event.
No, 100%. And it was supposed to be, by the way, a little behind the scenes. It was scheduled to be the main event until the night of the show. Hulk Hogan, and his wisdom and his creative control and his power and his ego, because he was doing a run-in in the main event, he didn't want to do a run-in in the semi-main event. So he pushed to have the main event be what it was. And yeah, it 100% should have been the Hart showcase match, especially since he wins, they have a good back and forth match. They're trading submissions. They're both trying to get the figure four. Really, really good wrestling. I mean, it's a Flair match, it's a Hart match, but it's very, very good. And yeah, like he taps Flair out with a sharpshooter, so he looks really, really good in the match. Crowd pops for it, and yeah, the crowd, should have went home happy at this point, seeing a great Bret Hart match, but no, we still had to keep going.
Yeah, and which leads us to the actual main event, which was Lex Luger versus Randy Savage with Miss Elizabeth. And yeah, look, and this match, it just felt like they were running out of time because I don't know if the Bret and Rick match went on a little bit too long, or if it was just a case of
it was that, and the segment, the little Roddy Piper segment, went long earlier in the show as well. So yes, they were literally running out of time. This one goes like 3 minutes, and then everybody just starts running out to interfere. And it's the same thing you've seen on every Nitro and every pay-per-view. It's the same old, same old.
Yeah, but then like Scott Hall comes out, and then Hulk Hogan like gets him not to interfere, but Scott ignores him. And then after the match, NWO attacks Lex, and then Sting comes out for the save, and that's the show. And yeah, like this match was, it was kind of a nothing match, to be honest. But it was like, which is a shame, because like I think Randy Savage is a great wrestler. You probably should have should give Randy Savage a little bit more time, but it's like it is what it is. But Austin, what do you think about this one?
Look, it wasn't much of a match. They brawled for like 2 minutes, did some stuff in the ring for another minute, and then everybody starts running out. It's literally every other Nitro or pay-per-view, Malcolm, in 1997, like the year before, was the NWO attacks somebody like Lex or whoever, and Sting comes down and makes the save, and that was the build to the Hogan match. They're just doing the same storyline. They just did, completed a month before, so it's like they're out of ideas. It's like, what else do we do? Oh, I don't know. We'll just have Sting save, at the end, and it's the same old, same old. I mean, it's a decent visual at the end with Lex having Nash in the torture rack. I mean, that was impressive. Lex was a big, strong guy, and he racked some really big people around the time. And Sting had, Hogan in the Scorpion Deathlock. So, I mean, that was fine. But it was literally like the same finish you'd seen a million times before. So it was like really nothing special. And yeah, it's only the main event because Hogan was involved, literally.
Yeah. So basically, like very similar to any Bloodline match when Roman was champion.
Essentially, yeah. The Bloodline interferes and there's shenanigans and Roman wins. Yeah, it was essentially the same thing. Yes.
Although I will argue, I think WWE did it better with the Bloodline.
Probably no. At least they were doing some longer term storytelling. Yes. Yeah. No. 100%.
Yeah. And I mean, at least matches were actually decent length, and they got
right.
But yes. Austin, if you could sort of go back in time and change one thing about this pay-per-view, what would you change?
I think we changed the same thing, Malcolm. Bret versus Rick is the main event, 100%. You switch the order, you have Bret Hart and Ric Flair close the show. That's the one thing you change about this thing, and it improves the show drastically.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for me, like that's one. And one, the other one I'd probably be is like just have the Larry versus Scott Hall match have an actual finish for having the Dusty Gems. I think having it in by DQ like also is it's one of those ones like I don't mind it being in DQ, but as long if it makes sense. And as you said, like Dusty attacked Larry first, which really didn't make any sense whatsoever. But overall, Austin, what would you rate this pay-per-view out of 5?
Yeah, it still wasn't a bad pay-per-view. I mean, again, you got some really good wrestling on here, and they give some of the matches the time. The opener is a solid lucha match. Benoit and Raven is fun. Jericho Mysterio is fun. Booker and Martel is fun. Larry and Scott Hall, for what it is, very old school, is okay. The trios match is not bad. Flair vs. Hart is excellent. So you don't have any, like, I would say match of the year candidates or anything, which is the one thing that would put, a pay-per-view in kind of an upper echelon. The Flair and Hart is kind of the closest thing, but even that is probably like a 3.5-star match. Like it's good. But it's not a super classic. And yeah, it kind of ends on a dud. Yeah, you got Kevin Nash and Giant, which is not very good. It's kind of more infamous for the injury than anything else. But I will still give it a solid 3.5 out of 5, only because I would still give it a solid thumbs up. If you want to see some decent wrestling around this time, a couple of good showcases for especially some of the mid-card guys. And yeah, if you want to see Hart's first match, it is a good one. So I would recommend that. And it's one of the better ones he would have at WCW. But I still give it a thumbs up and kind of a 3.5 out of 5 sort of territory. It's still good.
Yeah, no, I actually bumped it up a little bit since we started twins. I initially had it at 2.5 out of 5, but then after twins, like, yeah, so I enjoyed more than
it's entertaining.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't bump it up too much. It still ended up at 3 out of 5 for me. But it was funny enough, like with this being a joint WCW and NWO pay-per-view, I enjoyed most of the non-NWO involved matches. I think the NWO matches was kind of what took me out of it a bit. But it's still a solid 3 out of 5 for me. Like it was enjoyable. Like especially the opening match. Like that was just enjoyable. But it's time to spin the wheel for the next pay-per-view I'm going to be covering. It's another NXT. It's going to be NXT TakeOver Rival from 2015.
Okay, so yeah, that might be like a Richie or JPO or some one of those guys, kind of up their alley. yeah, those NXT guys. But yeah, most of NXT around 2015, 2016 was really good. So whatever it is, it's probably.
I mean, it's one of those ones. Like a lot of the NXT ones have ended up not at the top of my sort of ranking for the pay-per-views. But it's time to that's the end of this episode of Spear from the Past. Austin, we can be find you online.
Yeah, no, just kind of the usual places. Movie Hero Network is right below my name, right there, both on YouTube and the Facebook group that we have. You can join that, and a lot of people in our community post stuff over there. And if you'd like to see me talk more wrestling, the Lonely Marks Wrestling Podcast, myself, Richie, JPO, and Jacob Barber, every Thursday night. You can check us out, and it's on a separate channel, but we also link that in the Movie Hero Network group. So yeah, thanks for having me, Malcolm. Appreciate it.
And yeah, you can find me on Take 3 Productions hosting Rankum every Sunday night. This week is going is top 12 TV show spin-offs. And you can also find me hosting Sphere from the Past every week. Next week is going to be talking about NXT Takeover Rival from 2015, and then in about like 30 minutes, you can see me over on the Movie Hero Network doing Jonathan Caro's top 64. But with that, I don't have an rival video, so I'm just going to play this. Once if it plays, I'm just going to end the stream.